The sudden death of Yu Menglong has shaken China's entertainment world to its very core. Known to millions as a rising star whose delicate features and emotional depth touched countless hearts on screen, his untimely passing was first reported as a tragic accident. Kind of misfortune that could be explained by one single phrase: he fell. Yet in the days following the tragedy at Sunshine Upper East in Chaoyang, Beijing, rumors began to spiral. The public became restless, and questions multiplied. Now the official autopsy results released by Beijing Chaoyang Hospital have torn the lid off any attempt to contain the truth, revealing a horrifying sequence of details that suggest his death was anything but simple. The nation, and indeed the world, is in shock. The reconstruction of the incident begins with the night he was last seen alive. Friends and neighbors recall noises in the silence of the early hours, and then the devastating discovery of his body sprawled below the towering apartment block. Initial police statements hinted at intoxication, possibly a stumble from a balcony. Insiders whispered about inconsistencies that did not match a straightforward fall. What Beijing Chaoyang Hospital's forensic experts have now confirmed brings those suspicions to life in ways far darker than expected. The autopsy revealed bruises scattered across his body in unusual patterns, particularly along his wrists and shoulders. These were not consistent with impact injuries from a fall alone. They bore the telltale discoloration of force applied beforehand, of someone gripping too tightly, perhaps restraining him in a moment of struggle. On his right hand, the doctors noted raw claw-like scratches, a sign of resistance, desperate defensive wounds against an unseen assailant. Marks became the first indicators that Yu Menglong had not simply slipped away into the night, but had fought, however briefly, for his own survival. Blood tests added another devastating layer. Blood alcohol concentration measured at a dangerously high 0.12%, well above what would have clouded judgment and impaired balance. But it was not alcohol alone that poisoned his system. Traces of a stimulant were found within his brain tissue, remnants of an amphetamine-like substance known for heightening energy but also intensifying paranoia and confusion. For a man already under pressure, this toxic cocktail could have left him physically unstable, mentally fragile, and dangerously vulnerable to manipulation. Yet perhaps the most disturbing revelation came from the toxicology screens that detected an unusual drug in his system, chlordiazepate potassium. Rarely prescribed except in cases of severe anxiety or specific psychiatric conditions. The medication is a powerful tranquilizer, a benzodiazepine capable of inducing heavy sedation when consumed in significant quantities. According to the hospital, Yu Menglong had obtained and taken a high dose of this drug without medical supervision. How he managed to acquire it, and why he felt compelled to take it, remains unanswered. Combined with alcohol, its effects could have left him incapacitated, leaving him almost defenseless if another party sought to harm him. The presence of such a rarely used medicine sent shockwaves through both the medical community and his fan base, raising suspicions that he had been driven into desperate self-medication or worse, coerced into taking it. The examination did not end there. Beyond the bruises, the scratches, and the chemical evidence, pathologists uncovered subtle but unmistakable indications of abuse. Certain injuries, delicate yet undeniable, suggested that Yu Menglong had suffered invasive assault in the hours preceding his death. These findings have not been fully detailed in the hospital's public statement, but their mere mention was enough to ignite outrage. To imagine that a beloved figure, celebrated for his roles and admired for his artistry, could have been subjected to such violation before being cast down to his end, is a nightmare that fans are struggling to comprehend. The narrative of a simple fall collapses under the weight of these facts. Beijing Chaoyang Hospital's report sketches a picture not of accident, but of chaos, resistance, and cruelty. It points to a sequence in which Yu Menglong, intoxicated, sedated, and perhaps unwillingly drugged, was assaulted and restrained. Claw marks on his right hand become not meaningless scratches but evidence of a struggle, his final desperate attempt to fight back. The bruises on his arms and shoulders transformed from ordinary blemishes into proof of force holding him down. The combination of alcohol, amphetamines, and the rare chlordiazepate of potassium appear less like random misfortune and more like orchestration, the chilling construction of a man's vulnerability. The findings spread across media platforms. Disbelief turned into rage. Hashtags demanding justice for Yu Menglong trended worldwide. with fans swarming the gates of both Sunshine Upper East and Beijing Chaoyang Hospital. Candles, flowers, and handwritten notes piled up in silent protest against what many now believe to be a covered-up crime. The police, pressed by this new wave of forensic revelations, forced to confront a reality more complex than their initial reports suggested. If Menglong did not simply fall, then someone must have wanted him silenced. The emotional gravity of the report extends beyond the clinical data. Each bruise tells a story. Each milligram of drug detected raises a question. Who placed him in such a compromised state? Did he willingly ingest a chlordiazepate of potassium? Was it slipped into his drink? Why would an actor at the height of his career resort to such powerful medication, and if he did, what torment drove him to it? These haunting uncertainties echo through the corridors of Beijing Chaoyang Hospital as journalists scramble for answers and fans beg for clarity. What remains undeniable is the transformation of Menglong's death from an accident into a chilling mystery that refuses to be buried. The first part of this investigation reveals only the outer shell of horror, the marks on his skin, the poisons in his blood, indignities his body endured. Yet beneath these stark revelations lies an even darker color. One that points not only to physical harm but to betrayal, manipulation, and possible conspiracy. Hospital's findings are not the end of the story, they are its ignition, setting ablaze the demand for truth that no authority can now extinguish. Among the most damning discoveries was the evidence of invasive assault. Doctors, bound by professional discretion, anomalies in tissue and signs of forced trauma without elaborating in lurid detail. But the meaning was clear enough. Menglong had been violated in his last hours, subjected to degradation no person should endure. That one of China's rising stars, admired not only for his talent but for his gentle demeanor, could suffer such abuse shocked the nation's conscience. The words "he was assaulted" flashed across headlines, each repetition fanning the flames of anger until they roared beyond control. The combination of alcohol, stimulants, chlordiazepate of potassium further complicates the timeline. Medical specialists pointed out that the rare tranquilizer, when combined with ethanol, creates a state of near paralysis, reducing resistance while amplifying confusion. In this condition, Menglong would have been unable to defend himself effectively, making the scratches on his right hand all the more poignant. Symbolize not a successful struggle but a desperate, weakened grasp at survival. If he was indeed forced to consume these substances, it would mean his attackers engineered the perfect storm: intoxication, sedation, and humiliation preceding the fatal fall. Speculation spread like wildfire. Some suggested jealous rivals within the entertainment industry. Others whispered of powerful figures in business or politics seeking to silence him. What little was known of his personal struggles suddenly resurfaced. Friends recalled that he had recently confided about pressure, about feeling watched, about anxiety that gnawed at him in the quiet of night, that he had resorted to chlordiazepate of potassium, so uncommon that even psychiatrists rarely prescribe it, suddenly appeared less like coincidence and more like evidence of manipulation. Did someone provide it to him under the guise of relief? Or was it planted in his system to construct the illusion of self-destruction? As the hospital's statement circulated, a frenzy escalated into a storm of international proportions. Social networks pulsed with hashtags like "Justice for Menglong" and "Truth at Chaoyang." Fans erected makeshift shrines outside Beijing Chaoyang Hospital, the gates of which became a battlefield between grieving admirers and police trying to maintain order. Every candle lit was both an offering of love and a protest against silence. Every poster bore accusations: he did not fall, he was pushed. The truth is in the bruises and answers. International media outlets began to pick up the story, broadcasting it across continents. The horrifying details of the autopsy transcended language barriers, turning Menglong's case into a global symbol of injustice. Legal analysts on television debated the admissibility of the hospital's findings in court. Psychologists dissected the implications of his rare drug use, warning about the growing issue of young stars medicating themselves under crushing industry expectations. Even seasoned forensic experts confessed that they had rarely seen such a convergence of evidence pointing toward foul play. The pressure on authorities mounted. Police who had initially framed the incident as a tragic accident were now compelled to revisit every detail. All from Sunshine Upper East was no longer the conclusion, but merely the final act of a carefully staged sequence. Investigators began to focus on the period leading up to his death: who had access to his apartment, who had been with him in his final hours, stood to gain from his silence. Reports leaked that surveillance footage from the complex had gaps, crucial minutes missing from the record. Mere technical failure? Or deliberate tampering? The missing frames became a symbol of hidden truths, gaps in the narrative that cried out to be filled. While whispers grew into allegations, anonymous insiders claimed Zhu Menglong had been entangled in disputes with unnamed industry figures. Some spoke of a shadowy benefactor who had once financed his projects but later turned threatening. Others hinted at jealousy. Rivals resentful of his rising popularity. While concrete proof was lacking, the combination of circumstantial evidence and the harrowing autopsy details painted a picture of orchestration too precise to dismiss. For his fans, the scientific revelations only deepened the emotional devastation. The idea that their beloved idol not only suffered but may have been hunted was unbearable. Online, fan groups transformed into investigative collectives, sharing translations of medical reports, speculating about the timeline, and archiving every public statement. In their eyes, justice was no longer just the duty of the police but a mission of collective memory. They refused to let his death fade into the category of accidents, insisting it be remembered as an unresolved crime until truth prevailed. The broader cultural conversation also shifted. Artists and entertainers began to speak out about the suffocating environment of fame. The pressure to appear perfect while battling unseen demons, mental health, substance abuse, and the exploitation of celebrities became topics impossible to ignore. Beijing Chaoyang Hospital's findings became more than medical data, they became a catalyst for national reflection. A reminder that behind every glamorous image lies a fragile human being vulnerable to forces both internal and external. Yet amid the grief and outrage, one question echoed louder than all: who is responsible? The bruises did not form themselves. The scratches on his hand did not appear out of nowhere. A cocktail of alcohol, stimulants, and chlorazepate to potassium was not an accident of fate. Detail whispered of another's presence, another's hand guiding the tragedy toward its grim conclusion. Until that person, or those people, were identified, there could be no peace, no closure. The story of Zhu Menglong's death has become a haunting intersection of personal vulnerability, societal pressure, possible criminal conspiracy. The autopsy has transformed what could have been written off as bad luck into a case study in horror, a revelation of suffering that demands answers. Beijing Chaoyang Hospital, by daring to publish the truth, has set in motion forces far beyond its walls. Doctors' clinical notes have become cries for justice. Scientific objectivity a weapon against silence. Candles continue to burn outside the hospital and fans chant his name into the cold Beijing night. One reality grows undeniable: Zhu Menglong's death will not be forgotten, nor will it be forgiven until the full truth is brought into the light. Legacy as an actor now intertwines with his legacy as a victim. And in that intersection lies the seed of a reckoning that no power can suppress forever. The horrifying truth has been revealed, and once revealed, it cannot be buried again.